Hey, what's going on, guys? It's me, JerseyMain93, and welcome to the On-Ball Defense Guide Part 2 for NBA 2K24 on Next Gen. I want to give you guys a roadmap to how this video is going to be structured because this is going to be probably my longest video I've ever edited. So the first part of this video will be examining the badges. I think it's really important to understand the under the hood stuff regarding defense because a lot of people simply think defense is this broken aspect of 2K and they don't really understand why certain plays happen for the offensive player. So by looking at a few defensive badges, we'll learn how to maximize our weapons on defense. So once we're done with the badges, we'll move on into applying everything we learned in part 1 so that you can see how it works against players who like to use some of the more meta moves. Then the last part, we're going to be going over some advanced strategies that you need to apply when dealing with different type of players. And I don't really feel like I typically have to say this, but for this video in particular, I really believe you guys should study and rewatch this video multiple times, not for reviews or anything like that, just because I want you guys to maximize the information that's in this video. So right now you're looking at footage from Desar's NBA 2K12's On-Ball Defense Guide, and this video changed how I was able to play defense. This made me a good defender in 2K, and if I had just watched this video one time, I don't think I really would have gotten the lesson. So I had to keep coming back to this video and study it and watch it over and over again and really make sure that I was applying the things that he was teaching me, and that eventually led to me improving my on-ball defense skills that you're seeing right now. So please rewatch this video. Give yourself some time when you're watching this video. Don't expect to get everything that you're learning overnight. It takes time to really get good at this. I also want to add this because I don't want to trick anybody to staying and watching a very long video and it does not have the information that they want. Part 1 covered the controls. Part 1 covered basically what triggers to use, the left stick, when to use different type of animations. So if you are looking for that information, go watch part 1. Part 2 is not going to cover those things. I also have to add, you should watch the blow by badge video. Now it is going to teach you how to score through the body up system, but if you could understand the body up system, that is going to make you a much better defender. So please watch the blow by badge video as well. Now this is for people who have been asking me if you want to join the channel and support it, because this video took a lot of time, energy, and money. I know a lot of people don't think about that aspect of YouTube, but yes, this took money. And basically, if you want to support the channel and just give back, all you have to do is follow these steps, join the channel, subscribe at the tier that you could afford. I appreciate everything. If you become a channel member, you will have access to game nights with me, playthroughs, exclusive content, exclusive streams, Q&As, and coaching. So make sure that you subscribe to the proper tier if you want those features. Now let's finally get into the On-Ball Defense Guide Part 2. And I know you guys know the game. I don't really have to say this, but I have to emphasize it. If your badges aren't high enough, you really just can't complain about the defense in this game because everybody's out here with Hall of Fame and gold, scoring and playmaking and shooting badges. It is what it is. So you gotta have something that is going to be high enough. Obviously, the higher you go, the more return you get on your investment. So let's look at some of the badges that you absolutely need if you want to play great on-ball defense online in NBA 2K24. All right, the first badge we're going to be looking at is going to be the Challenger badge. You see, this build has Challenger on Hall of Fame. The Challenger badge is described as improving the effectiveness of well-timed shot contests against perimeter shooters. So that is going to be anytime somebody is trying to use an escape and firing up, and you need to get a hand up on the shooter, you're closing out those shot contests, you're going to activate Challenger. This is going to be your biggest weapon as a defender because we know most of these ISO builds are not trying to get to the rim. A lot of them are not slashers. A lot of them are just trying to shoot threes or perimeter shots. And I would recommend a gold Challenger badge at bare minimum if you play a lot of 1s or 2s. But let's look at this footage I'm about to show in a few seconds here with Trae Young and Steph Curry on the blacktop mode. Now this is Hall of Fame difficulty, but I want to show you guys what it typically looks like if you're trying to defend somebody you don't have Challenger. So don't just look at the shot coverage, which is crazy because that was smothering defense by Trae, but look at the shooting badges that activate Agent 3 on Hall of Fame. Now, mind you, over the summer, NBA 2K gameplay director Mike Wang tweeted himself off that we have a pure green window for NBA 2K24. So this means that every shot is basically makeable as long as we find the green window. Now this green window will change over the course of the shot depending on the defense being played on the shot. But I want you guys to please remember this, because even if you play great defense, it does not mean that green window is completely gone. It is not Thanos snap. How you contest a shot absolutely matters. Contesting with hands up versus contesting with triangle or Y, or actually jumping at the shot, will have a different defensive impact. Also, the location of where you contest the shot. Obviously, if you're contesting on the side, you're not going to have a big defensive impact. If you're contesting in front of the players, but your hands are down, like you're seeing right here with Trae Young, you again cannot have a major impact on the shot. And Trae Young obviously does not have the challenger badge at all. So we're going to finally look at some footage with the challenger badge and how it can impact a great shooter, somebody like Steph Curry. So on this first clip, Steph Curry is going to use his step back. And once he goes into the step back, you're going to see he has separation from me, more separation than he had versus Trae Young, but I'm still going to have a much bigger impact on the shot. And this is where we could really start understanding the benefit of this challenger badge. Now, if you look to the left, Trae Young had a much higher shot coverage percentage. He had to play pretty much smothering or perfect defense. He still got a shooting foul on Steph, while I was only able to cover 12% of Steph's shot. But I made a bigger impact on his shot because of the challenger badge. The point I'm trying to emphasize is simply this badge gives us the ability to back off of shooters comfortably. I'm not saying you give them so much space that this badge can't activate, because that is super possible. You still have to activate the badge by timing it correctly, but you don't have to end up like Trae Young right here. You know, you don't have to play such smothering defense and not get any reward for it. And the last point I want to make to advocate for the challenger badge is simply a lot of people are making their builds only to shoot threes. And so having that knowledge, we know that we have to stop their three-point shot. Now they may be able to do a couple other things. They might be able to make a layup, they might be able to dunk, but their biggest strength is going to be their three-point shot. And we have to pay attention to the pattern in which they try to go for their threes. That is going to always be the most important key to playing good on-ball defense online against three-point hunters, is that you have to pay attention to their pattern. Everybody has a pattern. Everybody has a move that they like to use right before they shoot the basketball. And once you understand or pick up on that pattern, the easier they'll be to defend. So that is the challenger badge. We won't be done with that badge. We have to move on to our next badge that is absolutely mandatory, and that is clamps. So clamps isn't as complicated as challenger, so I'm going to just briefly explain what it does and why you need this badge. So clamps is going to help you win those body up situations. If you have ever played great defense, but the offensive players still got around you and you felt like, hey, the game didn't reward me because I was in the position, I was in the path of the dribbler, but they still got around me, you probably did not have a high enough clamps badge. Here's a perfect example of my other build that does not have a gold or silver clamps. He has bronze clamps, which is pretty decent for the amount of offense that he has, but you can see he can't really stop the offensive player because they have higher playmaking badges, and he does not have the strength. I will talk about strength a little bit later in this video with our third badge, but for clamps, you have to understand you're investing in the ability to win those body up. You're not getting a quicker defensive player, and you're not getting somebody who's just automatically going to stop playmaking badges from activating. You are investing in when an offensive player is attacking you and they are trying to attack your outside foot, you won't get blown by. You won't get them just running straight through you or around you, or those animations where they again can just still progress towards the rim. You are going to knock them back. You are going to body them up. You are going to get more forced pickup animations when they pick up the basketball. And that is a big key to playing great on-ball defense, because there is going to be times where you know that they are trying to run towards the rim and you need to be able to get a contact animation that won't allow them to just get around you. So think of challenger as your answer for three-point hunters, and clamps is your answer for slashers or rim runners. All right, so let's finally move on to our last badge, and then we can finally get into the gameplay strategies. The last badge I believe you need in NBA 2K24 to play great on-ball lockdown defense is Immovable Enforcer. All right, this is one of my favorite new badges that 2K has implemented in a very long time. Immovable Enforcer is defined as improving a defensive player's strength when defending a ball handler or finisher. Most of the time when you're making a perimeter lock, you don't get a chance to really invest into your interior defense because you're not really going to be guarding bigs and you're going to get cooked anyway because you don't have the height advantage. Immovable Enforcer makes up for this in a very big way. So let's look at this clip right here. Now I want you guys to remember this is only silver Immovable Enforcer. So as you're going to see right here, the point guard is going to try to force his way to the rim. I step into his pathway and it's going to activate. I'm not doing anything on the right stick. I'm not pressing wide. I'm not doing anything extra besides just being there. And that is going to activate this badge. Now, this is not me advocating for you to make a build with no type of block or interior defense, because interior defense is going to take over the responsibility of stopping things like drop steps and other post moves. And obviously blocks is going to be responsible for blocking the basketball. So, you know, I mean, I don't gotta explain blocks to y'all. But let's look at another example right here. I just hit the three. He's trying to run and force his way to the rim. I get into his pathway and I get a tie ball animation. And just to re-emphasize it, this activates because I'm right there before he leaves his feet. If you want this badge to activate or you want to use it properly to stop layups, you simply have to be there on the gather for the shot attempt at the rim. If you're trying to be there and he already left his feet, it might be GG's for you, bruh. I'm not even gonna lie. But this badge is absolutely a savior, especially because, again, I don't have any type of attributes invested into interior defense or blocks. Now, you don't always just get those tie ball animations, but most of the time when you are activating Immovable Enforcer, it's going to be in these type of situations. So as you're seeing right here, he's just trying to force his way through the contact, and that results in him giving us the basketball back. Now, there is a difference between Immovable Enforcer and clamps. I'm going to define it for you guys right here. So there's a really cool detail as to why these badges activate in different situations. So as you're seeing right here, clamps is going to activate. The reason being is because I am not fully in front of the offensive player as he's attacking off the dribble. Instead, I am trying to get back into position. So any of those moments where you're trying to close out or you're trying to recover off of a crossover, you'll get the clamps badge activating. But I also just want to take a second and really show you guys the difference between an Immovable Enforcer bump back versus a clamps cutoff. Because stopping the offensive player's momentum could be the difference between still getting a dunk or a layup versus forcing them to just shoot a very contested jump shot. So it's very important to understand the difference between a bump back versus a cutoff. So a cutoff animation seems to be triggered also based on the momentum of the offensive player. Here's a great example of this. So as you're seeing right here, I'm backpedaling, beating him to the baseline because I know that's where he wants to go, because that's where all the favorable animations are. So I want you to see a cutoff animation, he's still going to carry himself towards the rim somewhat. So basically when you trigger a cutoff animation, you're going to reduce the amount of momentum that an offensive player has versus a bump back where he starts with little to no momentum. Here's another example of triggering a cutoff animation. Again, in a full sprint, I'm going to cut him off. He can still progress a little bit towards the rim, but again, fortunately, he's going to carry himself out of bounds. And that is one of the advantages of just having both clamps and Immovable Enforcer. So let's look at an example of an actual bump back happening on the drive. All right, I just want to remind you guys, I'm going to cover how to defend players like this, but first we got to get through the bump back versus the cutoff. So as you're seeing right here, it's going to be pretty fast, but look at the top right corner, you're going to see all the badges that are activating. Now, the reason why Immovable Enforcer is going to activate is because you're going to see in a few seconds here, he's going to try to do a crossover towards the left, and that is going to send him directly into my chest. And he does not have the momentum like the other two clips that I showed you previously. See that he's going to be bumped backwards, more towards the out of bounds and logo, versus when I'm activating clamps, as you're seeing right here, to able to continue to just basically inch his way towards the rim. And that is how a lot of players get scored on, because they're not able to bump an offensive player backwards. So please try to invest into your strength somewhat. I'm not saying you have to have a super strong lock, but it definitely helps. Okay, now that's going to wrap up the badges. We are going to finally move on to our next section, which is all about how to defend different type of dribblers in NBA 2K24 online. So let's get into the first one, which is all about the step back spammers. Players who rely on the step back, their goal is to sell the drive. The step back covers a lot of ground and you won't be able to shift your momentum to contest if you're doing a lot of left to right movement on the left stick. The best way to defend these players is to give them a moderate amount of space. If you play them tightly, the step back will force you to close out and then they'll have a step on you. There's always a pattern for these type of players, and they usually have one particular animation that is their tell before they trigger their step back. So again, each player has a different tell before they go into a step back. While the other players slow down, this guy, he likes to use a size up and then use a step back. I give him the shot, he doesn't want to take it. So I know when he does it again, I don't have to panic and try to close out because he's not really trying to shoot off the step back. While this player, he likes to use his escape and then call for a screen. The escape is not the tell, the screen is. You have to pay attention to details like that. So when you are playing good defense or you're defending somebody for the first couple of possessions, please just look at how they set up their animation, the different tells that they have, because that is going to make playing defense so much easier. If you know what type of shot and how your opponent likes to shoot, that is going to be half the battle of playing elite defense. You have to have a good IQ to play good defense, unlike this guy right here. And this is a really good example of how our badges really help give us a lot more grace on playing good defense. So it looks like I'm gonna give him an open lane, but I'm not too worried about it because I have clamps, I have Immovable Enforcer, but I've paid attention to how he has set up his step back, and you see that I'm sprinting as soon as that step back is over because he has not hesitated at all with pulling and shooting immediately after the step back. And as you see it in real time, he's not as open as it looked in slow motion, and this is a good example of how you don't have to react to everything. All right, so let's move on to the next player, which is all about the left and right dribblers. These players are again trying to take advantage of defensive lateral movement, and then they'll drive towards the rim or they'll shoot. Best way to defend these players is to shade. I'll cover shading in more details in the advanced technique section, but cutting off part of the court will give them a lot of trouble. So left-right players are interesting because there's typically like just two types of ways they like the left-right. The first way is kind of like just using the escapes, and that creates their left-right movements, and they kind of burst with the same hand, or they use the left stick and they just try to do a cross launch with their dribble style. So like kind of like what you saw early in the year with the Magic Johnson crossover. But the left-righters are pretty much going to be a great teacher in backing off. If you try to guard them closely, they will cook you. So here's a really good example. Initially, I'm backing off him and I'm going to be able to play decent defense, but then I close out a little too hard and he gets around me. I don't have my Hall of Fame clamps badge on this build, but that's just an example of how important spacing is against a left-righter. The other thing with left-righters is, again, if you don't really know how to move the left stick, as I showed in part one, if you're not using that technique, they're going to hurt you because you are going to slide yourself out of position if you're trying to do left to right movement and trying to keep up with them in that way. So make sure that you're backpedaling. Piece of advice I would give for left-righters is they typically have to slow down, or they will slow down before they explode in the opposite direction. So make sure that you're paying attention again to their tell so that you can notice when they might be shifting to the left or to the right. So that is the end of left-righters. Let's move on to our next playstyle. Next is the escape spammers. These players are pretty similar to the left-righters, but they'll use their escapes, particularly the behind the back escape, to get their separation. They're a little harder to defend because they're usually hiding behind the screen. Now, I also would advise you to guard them a little bit closer compared to other playstyles on this list because they are going to go into their jump shot immediately. The escapes create so much separation that a lot of them just assume that they're going to be open. So please guard them a little bit closer. You don't have to be super tight on them, but you need to be close enough to be able to get a well-timed contest. Their biggest weakness is not being comfortable shooting in tight windows because they're used to a lot of separation. So if you are relatively close to them, you are going to make a big impact even if the shot is going to register as being open. This play is a really good example of what I was talking about earlier with the challenger badge, because me and E-Money miscommunicated really badly on the screen, but I'm able to recover and I'm able to activate challenger, and that bails us out. I also want to add this: if you guys have noticed any of the clips that I've shown so far with people who are spamming escapes or using escapes, they're shooting immediately. And when I talk about paying attention and locking in, and you also need to have a high or decent IQ to be a good defender, you have to notice things like that. You got to notice how or what the move is being used for. So escapes are going to create the separation for you to shoot, while left to right movement is more so for rim running. You're going to notice I'm moving left to right on the left stick, and I'm using the turbo button because I know that he's going to hunt for this three-point shot. Please use your discernment because the game situation requires me to play this type of defense. The last player we'll discuss is the L2 cancelers. These players use a pattern to hide which direction they'll want to go. They're usually trying to force the defender to move first, and then they'll go opposite of his direction. This forces you to catch up to them, and then they'll go into their escapes. They'll call for a screen and hope you'll jump it because screens are so powerful in 2K, even with Pick Dodger. But the best way to defend these players will be shading and baiting them. Don't focus on their pattern of dribble moves. Instead, focus on pushing them in one direction. All right, now the advice I just gave, this is me re-editing on a different day. The advice I just gave was really more so for a team setting. If you are facing this type of player in the ones court, which is way more difficult to guard them compared to a team setting, try your best to play behind them, meaning you want to try to slow down your left stick movement. You don't want to react to everything. You want to, again, focus in on their pattern and only try to cut off their moves that are actually attacking you. And to simply explain what an attacking move is going to be defined as just the move that the offensive player is actually using to score. So a lot of the moves that you're going to see with these dribblers are just setups. Again, they're just trying to get as much separation as possible. If you hug the 3-point line, that is usually going to take away their main option because they're going to try to sweat to try to get that open 3-point look. But if they are driving towards the rim, you got to make sure you're paying attention to the move that is actually going towards you. Now we can finally get into our strategies to defending online. The first strategy we'll be focusing on is penalizing the offensive player by draining their adrenaline bars. The adrenaline system in 2K24 is designed around rewarding defenders for cutting off drives. When you cut off an offensive player, he'll lose an adrenaline bar, and in turn, each adrenaline bar he loses decreases his ability to make jump shots or score. Now with Gatorade Boost, it'll be rare for someone's stamina to run out, so it's difficult to depend on that, but you can start counting how many times you bump the offensive player. You want to aim for at least 2 cutoffs and then baiting the offensive player into shooting. Now you still should contest to be safe, but you don't have to play perfect defense for the remainder of the possession. Here is an example of me using this technique. All right, so here's an example of me using the technique. I was trying to find one where they were shooting a jump shot, but I don't know what happened to the file. So I'm going to get the first bump here. He's going to decide to turbo through me, and now I have the second bump. And now he's down to just 1 adrenaline bar, and now I could kind of roam around. I could kind of help out on my teammates. I could do a couple different things now because he can't really shoot anymore. He decides to drive to the rim, Immovable force is going to kick in, and of course, because he has 1 adrenaline bar left, that is going to be impossible for him to make. Now, this next play that you're about to see, this is again me using this technique, and this is kind of how the game was designed to be played this year, using this technique. But a lot of people again are focused on getting quick turnovers, so they're going for a lot of steals. So as you just saw, I got my first bump, and then soon I'm going to get my second bump. And as you notice, once both adrenaline bars are ran out, he can't be as aggressive as he was earlier in the possession. And I don't have to play as perfect. I don't have to be super precise with the left stick movement, and I can kind of roam around a little bit because now I understand that they can't shoot. All right, so let's move on to the next technique, which is baiting. Baiting the shooter is a more advanced technique compared to just the adrenaline system, which will change. Baiting has been around for a long time for playing really good online defense. So to bait, you simply want to back off of or angle your defender so that the offensive player feels like he has a lot of separation and he's open, but you're going to quickly close out and contest his jumper. Players assume you won't be able to cover enough ground, so make sure that you're fully sprinting and you're contesting with the triangle or Y button, or even the right stick flicks, which I showed you how to do in my right stick defense video. The key is to make sure you're not too far back, as this year 2K will penalize you for changing your momentum and slow you down. So this clip is the best example of this technique. I'm doing a couple techniques in this clip actually. I'm sending him baseline, and also I'm trying to bait him into shooting. But the main thing is, of course, when you are doing this, you have to be pretty precise, not just with your off-ball movement, because the main thing is going to be the distance, as I said earlier, but also your on ball movement. So I'm moving more up and down versus left and right on the left stick. I know I don't have the controller layout on this footage, but that's basically what I'm doing. It's not a ton of left to right movement. And as you see, I can't really explain it even further. It's the same thing. I'm just making him feel like he's open. The reason why this works is because you're making an offensive player just get sped up a little bit. We don't have too many tools on defense. We can't really impose our will. It's hard to just send offensive player in one direction, the things that you could do in real life to play really good defense. So, this is the closest thing that we have to actually kind of having some type of control over the shot that our offensive player is going to be forced to take. And as you just saw, this technique works for layups as well by making them think they have an open lane. But of course, you're just going to be super quick by predicting where they're going, beat them to the spot, and challenge it. And also too, as you're seeing right here, this is an example of me using this with my lock. You can do this only with your lock. I would not advise you to do this with, like, you know, somebody who isn't great at closing out, because I'm going to really give up a lot of space. But because I have somebody who has a lot of defensive ratings, I could be a little bit more lenient with his movement. So that's baiting the shooter. Let's move on to the next technique. The next technique is shading. Shading is probably the best way to guard players who can shoot and drive in for a dunk. To do this properly, you'll have to be at a moderate distance between the offensive player. But you also can't be too close where it's easy for the offensive player to drive around you if you make a mistake on defense. You'll also have to position your defender so part of his body is still in front of the offensive player. He can't be completely on the offensive player's side. This will ensure that he'll get a good clamp animation and not get blown by, as in part 1 I explained how that can still happen even if you have a high clamps badge. Now, when you're shading, you're cutting off his options, and this is going to force him to focus on shifting your stance. You have to be committed to cutting off one side no matter what. If you panic, you'll throw yourself out of position. All right, so here's some additional things I want to mention about shading. Shading can be used on the ones. It's still a really good defensive technique. The other thing about shading is if you're going to be a person that reacts to pretty much everything, you might have to go and get a little wider angle, but you might have to play a little closer. You know, you kind of have to try to overshoot the fact that, you know, you're going to be using a lot more lateral movements with this technique. Honestly, most of your movements should still be the more up and down left stick movements versus the left and right movements, but still with shading, because of the angle that you're going to be at, it's okay to use some of the lateral movements compared to other techniques, or just when you're playing evenly with the offensive player, meaning you both are in an even stance with each other. The other thing about shading is that you can kind of use it to zone areas off. Sometimes you got to think about just committing to not being able to give up this side of the court, playing behind the offensive player a little bit more, meaning you know, just allowing them to do their crossovers or dribble moves and you not react, and you just trying to force them into their second counter. That is going to really be additional information that really can help you with being a good defender that shades. So this is a good example of how it can change the look of a drive. I know he's not the best dribbler, but this is still a good example. So it's a few things about this clip that I also really think is a good teaching example. If you are in transition, don't worry about trying to wait and get into the shading stance. Allow it to happen naturally, as you see right here. I'm just going to wall off the middle, and naturally I'm going to enter my stance, as you just saw right there. He definitely sees my teammate stepping over, and because he has no space, he's going to panic. He's going to give us the basketball back. So shading is definitely something that I believe that you should incorporate. It's definitely going to help for left, right, and escape spammers. All right, let's move on to the next one. The last technique we'll cover is feathering. Feathering the left stick will give you smaller, choppier steps, and you'll be able to change directions much easier and faster. You fully press the left stick, changing directions will be harder since your momentum has to shift. You'll have to plant hard, and this will absolutely slide you out of position. When players are L2 canceling, this is a big reason why you'll get shifted. So to give yourself a chance, slightly move the left stick around in the same manner I taught in part 1, but you can add more side-to-side movement. You won't get that momentum penalty because you're not jumping hard to one side. The other aspect of feathering the left stick is it helps you play behind the offensive player. You shouldn't react to every move they do. You don't need to constantly cut everything off. You should only try to cut them off when they're attacking you. You just need to play your angles and try to minimize the separation they'll get so challenger can activate. Feathering will help teach you to play behind and use your angles more effectively. So always just constantly think about your position, be prepared for an attack, or be prepared to adjust. That is what you should be focusing on when you're trying to play good lockdown defense. If you are constantly trying to move everywhere the offensive player is going to go, you are going to throw yourself out of position. Okay, let's move on to probably the most helpful section in this video, which is all about our mistakes on defense. I wanted to cover mistakes that I think are pretty common, mistakes that I noticed when I watch other people play the game, and just things I really think will help you be a better defender that just isn't something that you will commonly hear in most on-ball defense videos. So let's get into it. The first mistake is pressing full court. If you absolutely need a stop, pressing full court should be one of your last options. pressing leaves you and your team just too vulnerable. And one of the easiest moves any decent 2K player knows how to do is to catch the basketball and then use an escape opposite of the defender's momentum for an open three. It's so much easier to just position yourself by running back on defense and playing on even footing when they begin to ISO. If you are trying to press, aim for creating contact so 94 feet activates, and you should have the goal of just trying to make the offensive player use up more of his stamina, not necessarily to force a turnover. But outside of that, make sure that you're running back and getting good position on defense so that you could be prepared to stop the ISO player. Mistake number 2, gambling for steals. While steals are more reliable this year, you just gotta have a decent IQ about going for them. If you are just spamming the steal button, you'll drain your stamina and adrenaline, and you won't be able to impact the offensive player like you could if you preserve those two things. Gambling for steals will also throw you out of position and will force you to catch up to your assignment, which will again make it very easy for them to cook you. I have another video on steals that will help you get easy steals so you can minimize how much you're gambling. So please stay tuned for that. Mistake number 3 is moving left and right for cutoffs. I showed why this was a mistake in part 1, but just to reiterate it, left and right movements won't get you the cutoff animations you really need to stop an offensive player. And when you're dealing with a player that does a lot of left-right cheese, you're just setting yourself up to get cooked. This is where that feeling of sliding too much will start. And because you can't change direction as quickly as an offensive player, it is going to be an easy bucket. And when I'm saying don't move left and right, I'm not saying don't ever move left and right. I'm just saying you want to minimize it. If you are trying to stop a drive, again, you want to do the technique that I showed in part 1, as that's going to give you your cutoff angles. Mistake number 4, guarding too close. As stated in part 1, when you're playing too close, you won't have the angles you'll need to trigger a good cutoff animation. And when you add in badges like Speed Booster, where an offensive player's first step is at its quickest, you would need cat-like reflexes and some luck to stop them. Back off of them and you can see you don't have to be super perfect to play great defense now, because you have better angles to stop the drive. So please don't fall into the habit of guarding too closely. There is a time and place to guard closely, to use hands up. All right, so the last mistake is going to be not using different triggers for the correct purposes. Now, I went over this in part 1, telling you which triggers to use. I also covered this in NBA 2K23, but this is probably one of the biggest issues I think that is holding a lot of people back from playing great defense. There is times where you just need to do an all-out sprint to recover. There's times where you need to use your fast shuffle. There's times where you just need to roam around with just L2. There's times to also use just the right stick, but for the most part, you need to learn how each movement is going to work in different situations. So for example, I'm going to use L2 to just move around. When they're sizing me up, I'm not going to really use both triggers until they're attacking or they're going at my defender, right? So that is how I get those quick cutoff animations. That's how you activate fast feet. That's how you are able to get those nice bump animations. And that's also how you minimize sliding around on the court, because if you're holding down both triggers, you're going to slide around the court. And of course, changing directions isn't as easy because you have a lot more momentum because you're trying to cut off players. So if I'm just holding down L2 all the time, obviously that can work at times, but certain players, you need to be more precise with your movement. While holding or not using L2 and R2 when you're trying to get a really quick movement to cut them off when they're attacking on their drive, that is also going to hold you back as well, because you're not going to have the speed to jump and beat them to the spot, and that's not going to give you the angle, so you're not going to create the contact that you need. And lastly is, of course, the right trigger. So the right trigger is also going to help you to get through screens, to recover if you feel like, okay, he got a step on me and you need to just do an all-out sprint and he's trying to rim run. You gotta also just have experience, and you gotta practice, and you gotta take on the challenge of defending these players to get better at the end of the day. The last thing I also want to add is, I know I said it throughout the video, but is not picking up on patterns. This is something that, again, is very hard to teach through a video, but you just have to constantly pay attention and know what your opponent likes to do. Now, this isn't like, the luxury of real life where you have a whole bunch of footage or, a scouting, plan or whatever like that against the person that you're trying to defend. So you got to learn on the fly. You got to learn in the game. But you have to pay attention to what type of shot that they like to shoot. You also got to pay attention to kind of you know, the pattern of moves that they like to go into their shots with. All these things I've said throughout the video, that is going to be your biggest key. If you have an idea of what your opponent wants to do, then you can learn, or you could have an idea of how you could take away that option for them and force them into something that they're not comfortable doing. I just want to say thank you to the channel members, because without the channel members, this video would not be getting done. And thank you to everybody who was super patient, everybody that was understanding. Obviously, I wish I could have got this video out to you guys earlier. I know that might seem like that's not true, but it is. A lot of things happened as to why this video took so long to make, but hopefully it still helps you guys. So as you're seeing right now, this is footwork part 2. So I'm gonna give you guys a quick roadmap of what my content is gonna look like for the rest of the year. So footwork part 2 will be my next upload. And if you didn't watch part 1, go watch that, as that's gonna help get you better at the pivot system in 2K. Then following that, I am gonna do a passing guide for NBA 2K24. So if you ever struggled with knowing what pass you need to throw, that video is gonna help you. And then I'm gonna follow that up with a shot creator guide. So if you guys need help creating a little bit more space in the mid-range, I got you. And then after that, I am going to drop an attacking size up. I think they're called attacking size ups in NBA 2K24, and show you how you can implement that into your game as well. Now, you are watching part 1. That is going to go over in more detail the controls and body ups and just everything that you need to know for part 2 to really make a lot of sense and to really help you with the controller side of things, you know, because this part was more so about the principles and then the things that I kind of think about and see when I'm trying to play really good defense. So hopefully you guys, again, really take the time and study everything that I shared with you, because it's not really anything else I could really do in terms of being able to make this video better, because it's a difficult video. I can't keep slowing down all the clips, but I hope that you still enjoyed it. Follow me on Twitter. I'm JerseyMe93. Peace.